Good evening and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the Silent Assassin. Well, the Silent Assassin's not here, but Science Advisor Matt Moniz is here. Stephanie Burke's not here. People don't really communicate with me, so I don't know where they are, but they're not here.
I communicated with you.
You do. You usually do. If I don't hear from you, then I get worried, because then I figure you're probably in jail somewhere.
That was a couple of weeks ago.
Mexican prison or... Well, we are here to talk about the paranormal, as we are each and every Saturday night. And if you are new to the show, I think there's some new folks that are in there in the chat room. This is the way that we like to do the show. We not only broadcast on WBSM, but we also like to stream it as well on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com, or right on the Spooky South Coast YouTube channel. You can watch the show as it goes on. Now, without Matt Costa being around, the visual portion of the program has gotten significantly less interesting. You just have the camera on myself and Moniz tonight, but that's okay. The important part is that everybody's in there chatting in the chat room and having fun. And if you are, able to do so, obviously if you're out driving around listening to us on WBSM, it's not going to be easy for you to jump into a YouTube chat room. But if you're sitting at home and maybe you're listening to us on the radio or listening to us on your Alexa device, or maybe you are watching us on your smart TV, because you can do that. You can watch the show on your television with this YouTube option. But then you can jump into the chat room and interact with everybody. Great people in there. I want to welcome all the first-timers. Want to say hi to everybody that's coming over from, there's the Woo Gabbers and the L Gabbers and all kinds of friends that we've been making along the way who are hanging out with us, and hopefully we'll enjoy the show. Tonight we're going to have a few guests. First, we're going to have joining us for a few moments at the beginning of the show. We'll be joined by Sam Baltrusis, who will give us an update on the Mass Paracon that's happening a little bit later on this month. It'll be taking place out in the Berkshires in Lenox, Massachusetts, and it's going to be quite the weekend. So we'll be talking about that with Sam. He also has a special deal for anybody that wants to take part in the Mass Paracon. He has the Spooky Pass that he's going to be offering tonight. So Sam will let us know all about that. And then later on, we'll be joined by our main guest for the evening, Alex Matsuo. She's been on the show before. She's somebody who kind of takes an ombudsman look at the world of the paranormal. She's somebody who takes a step back and says, I'm going to look at kind of the bigger picture of what's going on here. And I don't mean just about the world of paranormal phenomena, but also the world of the people that are involved in researching it, which sometimes can be more paranormal than the phenomena itself. So we'll talk with Alex about that. She's going to tell us all about residential hauntings. And this is something that we talked about a while back. We had Andrew Lake in, and we were talking about how it's a different animal when you are going into somebody's home to investigate. And so Alex will join us to talk about that. She's actually written a book about it called More Than Ghosts. And in that book, she discusses not only how to handle residential cases, but right to the beginning of the situation, how to form a group, what you should be looking for in other people to come on board with you, how to conduct these investigations. So she's going to talk with us about all that, because I think that that's a topic that gets overlooked a lot in the paranormal world. People kind of just take for granted, oh, I'm a paranormal researcher. And people want someone to come to their houses and check them out to see if there's actual activity going on. So what ends up happening is it's a natural fit where you say, well, they want help and we want to help people. But they don't take into account all of the ins and outs that are involved with that. They don't take into account the fact that, there's a variety of problems that can come up in that, both with the people that you are investigating the house, but also within your own group too.
Correct.
And we'll get into a lot of that, but I can just tell you that off the top of the show here, I've heard stories about people who have had folks that joined their group that went through an interview process. They actually tried to vet the person as much as they could. They screen them, they talk to them. They get an idea of where they're at with paranormal research. They get an idea of some of the other investigations they may have done. Or maybe it's somebody that they've actually worked with on investigations in other situations, maybe going to different events or tagging along with other investigations and say, hey, it seems like a fit for you to join our team. And then only later found out that maybe this person has a criminal past.
You think that would have come up in the background check?
Not everybody can afford to do a background check, though. Not every group can spend the money, because to do a thorough, complete background check, you have to pay money for it. You can do a Google search for somebody's name and see if they've been arrested, and you can see if there's any news stories about them. But if you search pretty much anybody's name, you get all those websites that say, oh, this person has a record with us. This person has a file on our website. And so you say, okay, well, I got to find out what it is. And you pay $26, whatever it is, to find out this person's background. And, all it tells you is that they got a speeding ticket once.
Yeah.
So it's not really cost effective for people to, be able to do that kind of screening for every person that joins the group. And I think that turns a lot of people off, because they want to come into it thinking that, they want to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm weird, you're weird, we're into weird stuff. You want to come and help me?
There's got to be a little something in the back.
And let's face it, we know groups that have done this before, where somebody says, well, I've got this piece of equipment, or I know how to do this, or I can build this for you. And all of a sudden, this person becomes a very attractive person to bring into the team, because you're saving them a lot of money in terms of research equipment and research, things that you can pick up along the way. And so it becomes very enticing to say, oh, sure, come on board. Not even take into account that, maybe this person is ripping off somebody else's ideas. Maybe this person is, taking someone else's equipment and passing it off as their own. There's all these little things that we think that we're so connected in the world of the internet that we can get by with a lot of those things, but it's not necessarily true. It's very easy to get duped by people in the paranormal world. It's very easy to get duped by people on social media, because not everybody's sharing who they really are on social media. So there's some leeway that you have to be willing to grant people on this. I never really fault the group if it turns out that one of their investigators is a criminal or has some sort of a sketchy past or what have you. I don't really always fault them, because it's easy to be blinded by bringing somebody on board and what it is that they tell you and what it is that they promise you. But sometimes the apple rots from the top. Wait, that doesn't sound right. That sounds
I understand where you're trying to go with it.
Right. I think what rots from the top? The fish? The fish rots from the head down?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know the saying you're trying to come.
I'm gonna conflate a whole bunch of sayings, but before we get into all of that, let's welcome Sam Baltrusis on the phone. He is the organizer of the Mass Paracon. You also know him as the author of numerous books, and you've seen him on television as well, on shows like Haunted Towns and some other projects as well. Sam, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Oh, we're doing pretty well. Spectacular, as we like to say. And I know that you've got a busy night, so we won't keep you very long. But we're really getting excited, because we're getting closer and closer to the Mass Paracon.
Yeah, the Mass Paracon's coming up September 27th. The big day is September 28th at the Seven Hills Inn in Lenox, Massachusetts. So it's 2 days of like lectures, ghost tours, a big investigation coming up on Saturday, September 28th at Vintford Hall Gilded Age Museum.
And I've been there a few times. I want to say that, the Berkshires, first of all, is a beautiful place. It is, if you've ever bought a jigsaw puzzle that said, New England scenery or New England background or whatever, like that's probably where they took the photos. You're going to be out in the Berkshires in September, at the time when all the foliage changes and all the leaf peepers are out. This is the time of year to really go and visit that area. But also, it has a very haunted history as well, that whole region.
It really does. And Vintford Hall, I haven't investigated, but I have gone in, and I will tell you that place is teeming with spirits. So I am wicked excited about hosting the investigation there. And also, with the tickets that we sell for the Vintford Hall investigation, it goes directly back to the restoration and taking care of this historic venue, which is, it's an amazing, amazing location.
I mean, when I walked into it for the first time, it was beautiful on the downstairs level. On the main level, it's a museum. They've got all kinds of things. They do tours. It's a beautiful spot. But when you went upstairs, they were still in the process of trying to renovate a lot of those rooms and trying to turn it back into what it once was. And I think that, first of all, we know that doing that will help increase activity, but also it gives the paranormal world another thing that they can look at and say, hey, we helped play a part in bringing this back to its former glory.
Absolutely, and like with this location specifically, like they have been diligently trying to restore it back to its original glory. And so every dollar that we raise will go back to the repair. And it's expensive. Like bringing a structure like this back to its original glory costs thousands, probably millions of dollars to do. So our little $50 per ticket will go directly towards those restorations.
Yeah, it's one thing when you're trying to restore like a 1700s home, and things you can get away with, like putting in wooden benches and things like that. It's a whole different story when you're trying to restore a Gilded Age mansion.
I know, right?
But I also love the fact that, when you go there, you really can kind of step back in time and stand there, like when they have the big doors open overlooking the yard, and you can realize, like, this is what it was like to live at that time, and to have some money and to be able to afford to have the home and the views that you want. It's a chance for us all to go feel like we're, Vanderbilts or Rockefellers for a night.
Absolutely. I that's the part that I love about the whole area, because it feels like you're kind of going back in time to a different era when things were a little bit more, the Gilded Age, which of course is, that's something that, it's hard to actually kind of experience that vibe, but it still exists out in the Berkshires.
And so things are going to kick off on Friday night, September 27th. You've got stuff planned, right? Pretty much from the beginning.
Correct. Yeah. So Friday night is going to be the VIP kickoff party. We have Roxy Zwicker, who's going to be a speaker for the VIP, and also Jeff Bellinger is going to be the main speaker on Friday night. After, we're having an add-on to go to the Edith Wharton's The Mount, which is literally next door to the host hotel, and beautiful. I don't know. Have you been to The Mount?
No,
Edith
I never have been. I know that Frank, our friend Frank Grace, has been. And he told me it's amazing over there.
It's it's breathtaking. So if you have the ability to go, a lot of people on Friday night, they just want to kind of have their cocktails and hang out with their pair of celeb friends. But we're hosting a tour there, and the tour guide he's been on Ghost Hunters and various shows. When the Edith Wharton's Mount has been featured on those shows, and he's actually going to be giving the tour of Edith Wharton's Mount on Friday night.
And then also, we talked about the Saturday night investigation, but there's a full day of activity before we even get to that point.
Yeah, so from 10 until 5, we have the event and lecture series. And, of course, Tim, you're going to be one of our featured speakers. We have John E.L. Tenney, who is the headliner on Saturday, speaking from 4 to 5. So you've got to come out. If you haven't listened to John Tenney speak, you've got to. He's amazing. And from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, we have Honoring Lorraine Warren with John Taffis and Andrea Perrin at the Seven Hills Inn. And then that's like a kind of a VIP gathering for just a small group of people. And then at 8:30 is the investigation at Vinford Hall, which is limited to 40 tickets. We currently have about 20 tickets left for that specifically, so I would recommend getting your tickets sooner than later.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for anybody that's never been there, it's the perfect time to go. It's the perfect time of year, and you'll be there with a great group of people. I mean, I know that every time that I go out and investigate with some of the folks that'll be there, we always have a good time, but it also seems like activity always seems to come out. And I don't know what it is about us or the chemistry that we have, or maybe it's just the vibe that we're going to be putting out that night of where, we're not going to be there because we're trying to sensationalize anything. We're going to be there because we want to make a connection with the past. And I think that will really help draw some things out.
Yeah, for the Saturday night investigation, we have a team of some, I don't know, people that you probably have not worked with. I know you worked with Scott Porter from Haunted Towns before, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we also have Richard Estup, who is a fellow author who's flying in from Colorado. He's going to be part of the investigation on Saturday night. And then we also have Sarah Lemos, who was just featured. She was the psychic on Ghost of Morgan City. So she's going to be part of the investigation as well.
And I know some of the folks that have already been reaching out and getting tickets to that too are great investigators. But if you've never investigated before, if you've never gone on a ghost hunt, perfect time to do it, because we'll have plenty of seasoned people there that can help you out. But you also won't be the only newcomers to it either, so you can kind of really feel at ease. For those people though that don't want to investigate on Saturday night, if maybe that's a little bit too intense for them, you do have something else going on around the same time.
Right. So what we're doing at the Seven Hills Inn is Andrea is kind of doing it's called stargazing. So the land that we're on for this property is beautiful, and there's a lot of acres of woods and outdoor space that we can explore. So the idea with Andrea is to go out with a group and stargaze. And I'm not an alien person, but apparently Andrea is. So the goal is to connect with either cryptids or aliens or other forms of supernatural beings out in the Berkshires.
Well, certainly it's plenty of stuff for people to do, and then things will wrap up on Sunday. I know that there's always kind of a decompressed breakfast the next morning where everybody kind of shares what's been going on, and that's always a highlight too. But you've also got there's other things in the area that aren't associated with the Paracon, but are close by enough for people to do on Sunday, so they can really make a full weekend out of this.
Yeah, so a group of people are actually heading out to, there's a train ride that goes, I found out that it doesn't go through the Hoosick Tunnel, and I was told that it did, but unfortunately it's not, but it's going close to the Hoosick Tunnel. But another idea is people can actually head over, which is, over in North Adams, or even the Florida entrance to the Hoosick Tunnel. People can at least go there and check it out, but just be careful. It's completely pitch dark, pitch black when you walk inside the Hoosick Tunnel on the Florida Massachusetts side.
Right. Don't go inside. We have to say that on the radio, because the rail line that owns the tunnel, that operates the tunnel, doesn't want people going inside. So we're legally required here on the radio to tell people don't trespass and don't go in there. Wink, wink. But the other great thing about that area is you're in the Berkshire. So even if you don't want to take part in any of this, it's autumn in New England. It's the perfect thing to do. You can hike Mount Greylock if you want, which is the tallest peak in Massachusetts. There's plenty of great other places to visit and see. For those listening here in New Bedford locally, this is also the place where Herman Melville had a home. So you can go and check out, they do tours there, I believe, of the Melville home that's in Lenox, I think, or it's either in Lenox or it's in regular Adams. But it's out there for you to be able to go out there and check that out too, if that's what you want to do. Certainly plenty to do for the weekend. And it's not a pricey ticket either to come and take part in all of this stuff.
Well, for this week only, we have what I'm calling a Spooky Pass in honor of your radio show, Spooky South Coast. And the Spooky Pass will get you to the event and lecture series on Saturday from 10 until 5 with vendors, speakers, and, of course, you speaking, Tim. And then that also gets you into the investigation on Saturday night for only $50. So the goal really for that is all that the money from the Spooky Pass is going directly 100% to Ventford Hall Gilded Age Museum.
Excellent. Well, hopefully everybody that's listening will come out and join us. If they want to get tickets, the easiest way is to go to massparacon.com, right?
That's right, Tim.
All right, so do that, everybody. Don't hesitate. Only 20 tickets left to investigate at Ventford Hall. You're definitely going to want to check this out. If you're not sure, all I recommend is take tomorrow and watch the movie The Cider House Rules with Tobey Maguire. Is that who it is? Or Elijah? Well, one of those guys. I always get him confused. But watch that movie, and by the end of that movie, you'll want to go there because that's where it was filmed. So
absolutely,
you can check it out for yourself. Sam, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
All right, thanks, Tim.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
That is Sam Baltrusis. Again, massparacon.com is the website to go and check it out. And Moniz, you were at Ventford Hall. You know firsthand how awesome that place is.
That place is awesome. It's big.
Not only for activity, but just for history too. Like even if you're not somebody who is that, everybody that goes to these conventions,
yeah,
they usually have to bring somebody with them that's not really that into it. And they say, I just come with her, or I just come with him. They're the ones that are really into this paranormal stuff. I'm just here to kind of hang out with them.
The architecture in the place is gorgeous.
And this investigation, even if you don't care about ghosts, being in a Gilded Age mansion is worth the price of admission right there. So come on by and check that out, massparacon.com. I was talking about it with John Brightman last week. You look at the map and you say, oh, well, from the South Coast, getting out to Lenox is about a 3.5, 4 hour drive. That's unless you're driving with Moniz, and we got there in like an hour and a half. But it's like, a 3.5, 4 hour drive from here. Or if you're coming from Boston, I think it's right around the same time, like 3.5, 4 hours to get out there. You will love the drive. First of all, it doesn't feel like you're spending that much time trying to get out there. But you will love taking that ride, especially at the end of September.
Yeah.
When the weather will be perfect, the foliage will be out. And I'm not I'm not a leaf peeper. I don't get excited about all the different colors. But when you're driving down the road and heading toward Lenox, and eventually you can't be on the highway anymore, and you start taking all the back roads, and you get to the part where it says, now we're entering the Berkshires, like it's just breathtaking how beautiful it is. I just got to remember to bring my chewing gum with me because my ears pop with a change of elevation. So anyway, looking forward to seeing everybody there. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's show. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about residential hauntings, and not so much about the just the ins and outs of it in terms of how to investigate it and all that stuff. We'll cover some of that as well. But we're also going to be talking about the actual process of people investigating it, because I think people don't understand that there's more to it.
I want to know about the most important chapter of this book, and that's the section on snacks.
We got to find out. Let's just bring on Alex Matsuo, our guest right now, and ask her about that. Good evening, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
Thanks for joining us. We're doing well here. Moniz just ate some Taco Bell, and he's already thinking about snacks. So the first question I have is, do you cover snacks at all in More Than Ghosts?
I hate to say that I do not, but snacks are an important part of paranormal investigating. So I concur with that.
I think I'm going to have to just I'm going to have to finally write the book, Spooky Snack Time, and just have it be like a recipe book for things that you can eat on an investigation
and not eat.
Yeah, things to stay away from as well. Everybody thinks a Slim Jim is a great idea for an investigation, and then they eat it, and it's a totally different story. So, Alex, we've had you on the show before, and we've talked. I was talking at the beginning of the show about how you kind of take a wider picture look at the paranormal world. You don't always get so wrapped up in the what's and the hows and all that stuff about the phenomena. Of course you do in your work and in your research, but you are also able to take a step back and look at the people that are involved in this world and the people that are the ones that call themselves paranormal researchers.
Yes, that would be correct.
And when you started taking a look at people that are doing this, I mean, what was the thing that stood out to you the most about the folks that are involved in the paranormal world?
Ooh, that's a good question. So overall, I love the paranormal community. I think it is probably one of the most diverse communities around. There are some who are really rocking it and doing it right and doing the research, putting in the work. And then there's others who might have seen it on TV and thought, oh, hey, this is cool. And they're the go-getters and just jump right on board, and they just start doing residential cases and doing investigations without really considering that there's a lot more to it than just, getting in your car and hitting the road and, going to somebody's house and finding ghosts. It's a lot more complex than that. And in that way, I see a lot of these type of people getting in trouble. So at least on the legal aspect.
Right. And we'll get into that too, because there are some legal things that you have to be aware of when you're doing this. But even just in putting yourself out there and calling yourself a paranormal investigator or a paranormal researcher, that would imply to the general public, to people that are looking for somebody that does that, it would imply that you have a firm basis in what it is that you're doing, and that you have experience, and that you have maybe a few years of getting out there and getting your feet wet under your belt already. And that's not always the case. This is a tag that people will put on themselves kind of just because they feel like it.
Well, and that's exactly correct. When you use, I've always said, when you say the word ghost hunter versus paranormal researcher or paranormal investigator, there are different thoughts that come to mind when you hear those terms. And so when you're using these titles, even just ghost hunter, it implies that you have some credibility when you are putting yourself out there, whether you intend to or not. You are putting yourself out there as an authority on this topic. And you could say you're just doing it for fun and whatnot, and maybe, you're not as knowledgeable as you want to be, but you're getting there. But putting yourself out there does establish yourself with some sort of authority or credibility. And and a lot of people don't really understand that, and then they find themselves in a situation that might get a little too hairy, and, okay, we either need help getting out of the situation or we're way in over our heads.
Jeff Belanger coined a term years ago called legend tripping, where basically the idea is that you're going to do this just to be part of the story and to have an experience and to, just kind of trip on the legend. And that, I think, is a great designation for people that are just in this to have fun, that are in this to have an experience, that are in this to have a story to tell other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just being a legend tripper and saying, this is what I'm into this for. It's a totally different story if you say to somebody, I'm going to be somebody that makes myself available to help people and to conduct serious research. If you're not prepared to do that, just take that legend tripper tag and run with it.
Yeah, it's a casual observer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, no, I agree. Oftentimes, we've actually just recently, well, for me personally, I have been doing this for a while, but my team recently, we just started taking people under our wing who want to get into the other side of ghost hunting or legend tripping and saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to help people in this, or I want to lead other people into this adventure. And when I told them, I said, okay, you can hang out with us for about a year or so, and then, we can go on from there if you really want to go through with this. And they're like, oh, wait, a year? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to, if you really want to observe what we do, you're not going to get an idea of what the work is like in a month or 2 months, 3 months. It's going to be about a year.
Right, and especially considering it's not like you can go out every night and investigate either.
No, and I don't know anyone who wants to do that.
I mean, I hear these groups that say, oh, we've conducted over 500 investigations. Well, if you have, something's wrong. Because, first of all, like, I don't want to judge you on a personal basis, but what the hell is your social life and family life like if you have that kind of time? 500 investigations, if you're giving them the amount of time that you really should be, I would think you'd be lucky if you could conduct 52 investigations in a year. If you're going out every Saturday night and doing an investigation, and even that would be surprising that somebody could dedicate that much of their time to being able to do it.
Well, and not only that, but what are you putting out from that work? What are the fruits of that work? Are you going through your data after the investigation's over? Are you working with the people who you are calling your clients? What are you producing out of that work, or are you just doing it just to do it? There's a huge difference in that when you look at the titles of paranormal researcher, paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, legend tripper, researcher, presenter. I mean, there's all sorts of different expectations out of that. And for me, I can't do that many investigations. I think I limit myself to just so many per year because I want to put in my energy and give it the amount of energy that it deserves. So, and really, ideally, you should be spending time before you investigate, like actually reaching out to people and the people that are going to be involved with the case and getting to know them and getting to know their situation. It shouldn't just be this person wants us to come and investigate, and we're going to show up at their house at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and by 8:30 we're going to be knee-deep in the investigation. And I think that a lot of groups look at things, and they say because we've got such limited time to do this, we've got to jump right into the investigative part. But the actual, I guess we'll call it the location investigation, is only part of the actual research. Yep. Oh, yeah, the investigation itself is just I don't want to say the sliver because it's a little bigger than a sliver, but, you have your historical research. You have your research that, where you're looking at what other teams have done there, because I think that's important. Because if they made a mistake somewhere, you don't want to repeat it. If they did something that worked, you might want to try that. And then there's the after part of it. You're going through that data. You're going through the video. You're going through the audio. You're going through interviews. There's so many parts of this, and the investigation is just one part out of several.
I mean, and also, this is just my opinion. Maybe you feel differently, or maybe some other groups feel differently. But you should also have some time to spend with your team outside of investigating. You know, go out and go bowling together. Go out and have dinner. Do stuff that helps you build chemistry as a group. Because a lot of times, people get involved in this with people that they don't know until they find out that they have a shared love of the paranormal. And that's what kind of brings them together. And you need to kind of really develop some bonds, because you're going to be put into situations where you have to trust each other explicitly.
Yep. Oh, I agree. I'm actually trying to get my team to do a axe throwing, an axe throwing activity.
It's a lot of fun.
I got an axe throwing recently, and I'm like, guys, we have to do this. So, and we have a pretty big project happening in October that's basically going to take up every weekend in October. So we're going to try to do this before then. When we're having those moments where we might be ready to kill each other, it's like, oh yeah, I love this person. They're my people.
And if anybody wants to try hatchet throwing, there's go to seizethedeal.com. We got some half-price deals for Stumpy's Hatchet House here at WBSM if you want to check that out. But it's a really great thing to do, because not only does it help you kind of relieve stress and kind of help you get any of the angst out, also it really shows you, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to piss off that person in my group. They're really good at throwing a hatchet.
Yep, that's right.
They need to set one of those up in Fall River.
They do. That's where Stumpy's is. Stumpy's Hatchet House is in Fall River, about a mile or so from the Lizzie Borden house. They have a big picture of Lizzie Borden painted on the wall too. It's an awesome place. I'll have to take you, Moniz. You'll love it. It's amazing.
That is so hilarious and irreverent at the same time.
It's the perfect place to do it. I mean, and really, when you're standing there with Lizzie Borden watching you, you really want to up your hatchet throwing game.
Yeah.
Here's the master standing over us. She got away with it. So if that can happen, then we really got to up our game. But
I like it.
I mean, you talked about your group doing stuff like that outside of there. Your personal group, are you people that came together over the paranormal, or are you people that knew each other outside of this?
I would have to say we came together because of the paranormal. So I run a meetup group here in Raleigh, North Carolina, what we call the Triangle, because we got Durham and Chapel Hill and all that, those areas. So a lot of these people actually came to my meetup, and then it was more like, oh, hey, I like you. You seem to like me. We seem to get along. You want to join the team? And, I've had members who I've connected with on a non-paranormal level, too, and I've always really valued that, whether it's Disney or just history in general or theater. Having those bonds and having that way to connect outside of the ghost stuff, I think, is really important. And Leslie mentioned in building trust and also just building rapport with each other. And, I brought one of my team members with me for some things in my personal life, because we have a connection that expands beyond that paranormal life.
So, I know in the group too. In the book rather, in some of the description that I read, you actually mentioned about how it is to form a team, what should be involved in forming a team. For those out there that are thinking about doing this, that are thinking about wanting to get involved in paranormal research, maybe they've been doing a little bit of book research over the years, or they've been, of course, as we mentioned before, watching the television shows, but what have you, whatever it is that draws their interest into getting involved in doing this. Let's just say that they feel that they're at a personal point where they're ready to get out there and do this. Do you recommend that people find an established group to try to join first, or do you recommend people look into starting their own?
So the way I started was a bit, I guess, kind of both. I had contacted a few local teams in my area, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or becoming more involved in this. Would it be okay if I shadowed you? Or would it be okay if I came to some of your meetups, or I came to some of your investigations? And I just laid it out ahead of time with my intentions, because if I didn't want to join the team full time, I didn't want to waste anyone's time. Mm-hmm. And a few of them were cool with me, kind of tagging along and shadowing. And, I paid my dues too. I was sitting there fixing equipment. That's actually how I learned to, fix audio recorders. Was someone from a team handed me their audio recorder that was busted and said, hey, put this back together. And, I had to pull in my experience from theater, putting microphones back together, and so paying my dues through that. And I learned a lot from shadowing because I learned what I really loved about these teams and what worked well for them. I also learned what didn't work for them because, paradrama can be found almost anywhere in any group, no matter how well a group gets along. Sometimes there's a little bit of drama there. And that's probably the biggest lesson I learned is, hey, that's okay if it happens. But I was able to take the little bits and pieces that I got from these other teams and created my own. Because ultimately, I kind of wanted to be my own boss in this because I'm busy and I needed something that was going to be flexible. And when you are your own boss, you can kind of give yourself the time off you need.
Right, exactly. And I've always recommended to people too, like, it's good to, like you said, watch an experienced group, see how they do things, see what you like and don't like about the way that they do things, but also you get an idea of what's involved beyond, things that you didn't think of. Like, you don't think about the fact that, all right, equipment's going to break, somebody's got to fix it, somebody's got to show up and scout the location ahead of time, somebody's got to interview the person who is having you come in and give them kind of a little bit of a psych eval before you get involved in all this stuff. Like, all these little things that you wouldn't normally think of until you see it in action. And for anybody that ever says to me, well, I've tried to get involved in local groups and get them to let me shadow, but none of them will let me come along. My advice to that is just tell them, hey, can I come on your next investigation? I'll bring pizza. And if you say that, they will absolutely let you come along 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
But you're right. Don't just stand there and watch. And say, all right, I'm just going to hide back here in the corner, because then you're not really making the most of that opportunity either. Say to them, okay, let me help you. Let me help you lay out some of these cords. Let me help you wrap some of this stuff. Show me how you do this. Little things like that are how you're going to learn, like to tape wires against the wall instead of leaving them in the middle of the floor. Things that, are the small little cornerstones of investigating safely that you just wouldn't think of because you've never encountered it before. So let somebody else's mistakes that came before you help guide you in how you're going to do things.
And that's a big thing that's in More Than Ghosts too. I kind of do something a little unconventional because, most people who write books, especially paranormal books, we want to establish ourselves as, hey, I hate to use the word experts in this, but it's like, hey, we know our stuff. I'm credible in this. But for me, I'm like, hey, I'm here in this place now, but here's where I messed up. Don't do what I did.
Right.
So that's what I cover that in More Than Ghosts. So I do have some stories of where I either got really lucky in a situation or, hey, I almost got in trouble because I didn't know better. Now you know better. Don't do what I did.
I've actually gotten away from the idea, too, of like, we can't call ourselves experts. Sure we can. Because you might not be an expert in exactly what it is, because we don't know what the phenomena is, but you can be an expert in what it is that we're talking about tonight. You can be an expert in how to investigate. You can be an expert in, how to manage a group. You can be an expert in how to get along with other people. I mean, these are all things that are part of the process. And so certainly I have no problem, referring to you as an expert as such. The problem is even if you are an expert in this, you got to get people to listen. And I think that's probably going to be the most frustrating thing is you could hand out a copy of this book free to everybody that ever wants to become a paranormal investigator. And still a majority of the people aren't going to listen.
Right.
I don't know what it is about this particular field of research, this particular, let's call it what it is, this hobby that will go into it feeling like they know everything already and that there's no humility involved in this for a lot of people.
Yes, and that is especially true with many teams, especially the newer teams I've noticed, like the teams that are, I would say less than 4 years old. And I don't know if it's just, because of the time or what's going on. But I work with a lot and I network with a lot of people, and especially for when I'm doing cases, because I don't know everything. I don't know everything when it comes to phenomenon, and if I'm stumped, I reach out to people and I say, hey, this is what's happening. what's your opinion on how to go about this? And a lot of these people are from the older days of ghost hunting. I would say even pre-Ghost Hunters, the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking 80s, 90s era. And I still have a lot to learn from these people because they also grew up and were doing this in a very different era, a very different time of communication. So, I mean, these podcasts and videos and the internet, the internet in general, they didn't have that. So their research came from field experience and reading books mainly, and maybe watching a TV special here and there. So I find that I'm gravitating towards them when I'm stumped on certain situations because they have a different wealth of knowledge that I didn't really experience. So.
I mean, my co-host tonight, Matt Moniz, well, not tonight, but, every show, but he's here with me tonight. Matt Moniz has been in this field for a long time. He got involved in this when you were 15, 16 years old,
Yeah.
and now you're 70. So you've been involved in this for, I tease him, but you've been involved in this well before this was something that people were watching on TV and before you could network with people over the internet, and you kind of just had
Before there was an internet, yeah.
And you had to just meet people where you met people.
Well, back in my day, I'm 52, so I was doing it back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And back then, all you had were books and the occasional, and I mean very occasional, little conference or lecture done by an individual. I remember the books were the way to go because you could find them in the library, and what you do is you wrote to the publisher. The publisher would then forward your information on to the author, and then the author would hopefully eventually write you back if you were lucky.
Right.
And
you were fortunate enough, though, to hook up with somebody locally that you
Yes.
could actually shadow and learn from.
yes, in the late 80s, I was able to hook up with Maurice, who actually who was involved with the Ryan Institute and those people, and I got a chance to learn from people that learned from the actual what we're calling professionals back then. And then in the mid-90s, I watched a lot of TV shows start popping up, and the interest started getting, more and more with, like TV shows like Sightings, and of course the X-Files was a big boost. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I can talk about this stuff without seeming that crazy anymore.
Right. You can use the pop culture aspect of it as your in to start the discussion with people. But that's, not everybody's lucky enough to find a mentor these days because there's people that just don't want to do that. There's people that don't want to take the time to take somebody under their wing and teach them. And Alex, you were mentioning that social media helps give rise to a lot of these people. I think another thing that gives rise to a lot of these people, there's two things that I'm seeing that have a big influence on this, and we can get into this maybe after the news break because we're going to have to take a break for the news in a few minutes. But one is the fact that everybody can kind of produce their own, whether it be a radio show, television show, what have you. Everybody can do that now from their own living rooms and put themselves out there as a paranormal personality. And then the other thing, we mentioned the Mass Paracon at the beginning of the show, but the rise of these conventions has led to the rise of this almost like a hollow stardom where people can get out there and get on the lecture circuit without really having a lot of stuff to lecture about. And it's concerning, but we can get into all that coming up after the news. When we take that break, of course, you'll see on Spooky TV, you'll see we'll just put the logo up there, and there'll be a few minutes of blank space there, but here on the radio, people will hear the news. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue the discussion. During the break, Alex, if people want to find out more about you, how can they go find out about you, and how can they pick up a copy of More Than Ghosts?
They can find me at alexmatsuo.com. They can also type in my name on Amazon, and More Than Ghosts should pop up. It should be one of the first results.
And how long has the book been out for?
It's been out for a couple of years now. Actually, almost 4 years now. So, I might be looking into updating it pretty soon. I'm actually putting out a new book later this fall. I guess you could say it's kind of the companion book to More Than Ghosts. It's called A Brave Mortal's Guide to Ghost Hunting. So, basically a beginner paranormal book.
I like that title, and I really think too that people will it'll resonate with people when we get into the next hour. Even if you are somebody who is an experienced investigator, and you have something that you want to kind of chime in with, it's okay to call in 508-996-0500. Just keep it on topic tonight. Generally, we kind of like let things go, and we have kind of like an open philosophy where people can kind of talk about whatever they want to when it comes to the paranormal. But tonight, we want to keep things on point because we are having this discussion, and there's a lot left to cover coming up in the next hour, including how to form a group if you're going to do that, how you should look into starting one, what kind of people you should be looking to, how to avoid some of these situations that we've been talking about. And then we'll get into the real heart of the situation. What happens when somebody wants you to come to their house and help them with what they think is a paranormal problem? How should you approach that? How should you handle that? And Alex, I know that that's the part where people get into the most trouble. That's where people end up falling on their face. And as you've mentioned, that's where kind of groups can fall apart. So we'll get into all that coming up. And we want everybody to know, too, that as we get into what we call the spooky season, I think we're into it now. I mean, it's September. I'm counting. It feels like fall out there, so I'm calling it fall. But we'll have all kinds of things going on. I'll be at some libraries giving some different lectures. We're trying to put together a few events before the end of October. So stay tuned to SpookySouthCoast.com, and we will announce all of that. I can tell you this. I'm working on a return to North Andover, to the Parson Barnard House, so we'll have more information on that coming up a little bit later on this week, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. So just stay tuned to SpookySouthCoast.com for all of that, and of course follow me and the show on social media. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with science advisor Matt Moniz. We are talking about residential hauntings and how to handle them, the challenges that come with them, but also the rewards that you can get from them as well. With our guest, Alex Matsuo. She's the author of the book More Than Ghosts. And we were talking in the first hour a little bit about kind of how some of these paranormal teams come to be these days. But Alex, one of the things that I think people don't understand when they're trying to put together their own group, or when they're trying to join a group or what have you, is that it shouldn't really be about the group itself, if that makes sense. It shouldn't be a power trip for anybody. It shouldn't be an ego boost for anybody. I mean, you should be forming a group where everybody kind of has the mindset of it's about the work.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. I find that in the paranormal community, there's kind of an ego problem. And I find that this ego problem can be rather inhibiting for a team. And especially when it comes to local groups and whatnot, I keep hearing the stories of, oh my gosh, it's all about the competition. We're always competing with another group. And I'm like, what exactly are you competing with? You know, are
Right.
you competing for space? Are you competing for clients? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, going into it, I mean, I chose the people that I chose because they were passionate about the work. And, you know, I know there's some teams that will only take people if, you know, if they, you know, look a certain way, or they can present themselves a certain way, they can put on a performance of whatnot, because they have this brand and this image that they want to maintain. And for me, I'm like, if you're passionate about the paranormal, you want to do the work. That's the biggest thing. You want to do the work, and you pass the background check. Yeah, let's give this a try. Anybody who's been on the team, who first joins the team, is usually on a 3-month trial basis. So even after, you know, you sign the paperwork to be on the team, you're still not a full-on member until 3 months from your join date, because we really want to make sure that this is the right fit, not just for us, but for you too, because you could join my team and you find, you know, I'm not really clicking with these people, and then that gives you a way out.
So during that probationary period, when people are kind of feeling everything out and you're feeling them out as well, are there any particular red flags that you look for with the way that people interact with both you and those who call you in for investigations?
Flakiness is a big one. So you say that you're going to be there for X, Y, and Z, and then something comes up last minute. I know life can happen, but if it keeps happening, you know, when it comes to like the third or the fourth case and something's happening, there's a problem there. But I've also noticed, because, you know, when you're on a paranormal team, as anyone who's been on a team, sometimes you do get attention. If you're showing up for the times that it's a publicity opportunity, but you're not showing up for like the residential cases or doing the work behind the scenes, that's a red flag.
Right.
And also not taking into consideration and carefully choosing your words when you're interacting with clients. We're not there to terrify a client. We're not there to scare people. We're not there to say, you got a demon in your house. We're not there to say, you know, to give an unsolicited psychic reading, you know, when I have my mediums, you know, on site to do the work. So just telling the client things that they shouldn't be telling the client, and also just kind of doing their own thing, because I guess you can call me a control freak in this way, but anytime like the client, one of my team members, like my medium or anyone wants to say something to a client, they have to clear with me and my case manager.
Right. I was just going to ask you that. I was going to say, like, do you feel that every person that's part of the investigation, that's part of the team that you are there representing, do you feel like if they speak to somebody, they should be acting as if they're speaking for the entire team? Or,
Yes.
or should they be considering that when they speak, that they are speaking for the entire team?
Absolutely. I always tell my team members, when you are on an APS investigation, you are a representative of APS. People see you and they see the title, they see the name. And people will look up APS and they'll see my name associated with that. And there's nothing more important and valuable in the paranormal community than your good name. So that's something where if you speak, you are a representative of APS. Even if you say, this is just my personal opinion, that person's still going to be thinking, well, they got on this team somehow. So I'm very, very adamant about that.
So then, that being said, then if anybody should consider the fact that when they speak, they're speaking for the group, then do you think that a group needs to have the same philosophical approach to things? Does everybody have to kind of be in harmony with what you think about certain theories or certain approaches to investigation?
It depends on the situation. There are some things that we do disagree on when it comes to certain school of thoughts with the paranormal, but luckily it's usually in terms of, if we're talking demons. I guess I hate to use the word demons, but that's a good example, because we're all kind of on different schools of thought when it comes to demons, which is actually a good thing for us. And so, because I welcome diversity and I welcome differing opinions, but when we're on a residential case, we have to be one unit. So even if we have to go off-site and duke it out at like an IHOP or something, we have to come back as a united front.
Right. So it's okay to disagree, but you should never disagree. And the client should never know that there's a disagreement. You can have that argument internally, but when it comes to dealing with the person who wants you there in the first place, that should be a united front.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
I wish it worked like that in life, let alone just in paranormal research. But
duke it out at IHOP and, it'll be okay.
Do you have a process that you go through for pre-screening somebody that wants to join you in terms of, finding out any kind of issues that they may have, any legal problems that they may have?
Yeah, we actually have a form that that the client fills out online if they want us to come in and investigate. I'll actually pull that up and I'll link it in the chat box. So we ask for their name, email, their address, very, very simple things. But then we ask them, what do you need from us? Do you need an investigation from us? Do you want advice from us? Or do you just need to talk to somebody? We offer all that. We ask where the phenomenon's happening, if you've consulted anybody before you talk to us, because during some more complicated cases, there tends to be a breadcrumb trail, and we try to follow the breadcrumb trail. And we ask them to describe the activity, when it started, if law enforcement's been called, or if they're seeing a doctor about it, if the case involves children, if anyone else has had experiences, their religious affiliation, what they want us to do by the end of the investigation, so establishing those expectations. Urgency. We also ask about medication. Technically, they don't have to disclose the medication part to us,
right,
but we do ask. It's nice to know because sometimes medication might explain some of the phenomena. We also ask, if anyone's using drugs or narcotics, illegal, legal drugs, or any paraphernalia. The final question on our form is, hey, are you willing to accept the possibility that your haunting could be debunked? If you say no, that doesn't disqualify you from getting an investigation, but it lets us know where you're at in your position. So.
I made this reference before on the show, but it bears repeating again. People always ask me what's the most important book they can have to be a paranormal investigator, and some people will look at Hans Holzer books, or some people will look at some of the books by the Warrens or whatever. Like, what's the one book you need to have in your library if you're a paranormal investigator? And I always say it's the Big Book of Pills, because you need to be able to look up what these medications are. And listen, I know that we want to not be snoopy when we go into somebody's house, but it's okay if they call you in for an investigation, open up the medicine cabinet, because 9 times out of 10, you can solve a lot of what's going on just by some of the things that you see in there. It doesn't mean that it's the reason why, but at least it gives you an idea of what it is that you're dealing with. But what about for the people that join your team? What do you do to kind of pre-screen them, the people that want to become investigators alongside you? Is it just a matter of Googling their name and seeing what comes up, or do you go into some deeper background checks?
We do do a background check because I need to know, like, have you been convicted of anything? If you have something spotty on your background check, that's not it depends on what the charge was. I mean, if we're talking theft or pedophilia or anything like that, you might be disqualified. But if we're talking like, you drove without a license for 2 months, and you learned your lesson, but I do also do a search on Google. I think that's important. I check out your Facebook page. I check out your Facebook page, your Twitter, your Instagram, because I want to get to know who you are. Because, when you're on an interview or you're trying to join a team, you are going to present yourself as an ideal candidate, and that's not a bad thing. But it gives me an opportunity to get to know you, outside of the paranormal realm. And and we also go through the interview process. If they haven't already joined the meetup group, I make them join the meetup group, and they need to attend at least 3 meetups before I will consider having them on the team. Mainly that's for the commitment. Like, if you can commit to attending a meetup every month, that's awesome because, hey, we have a meetup every month. We also have a team meeting every month. So we're taking up at least 2 days of your month per month, and that's if we don't have any cases going on.
I mean, I would like to think that you want to give people the benefit of the doubt to some degree. Certain things that might show up as Turtle Boy Sports calls them, Google trophies. When you find those reports of something about the person, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But we see way too often of people that find things out about people that are on their teams well after they've already been part of their teams, and it's not like they find out that they are somebody who's written a bunch of bad checks, or somebody who has a history of menace on the road. Traffic violations. It's always like really, really bad stuff that we find out. We find out that there's people that have history of sexual assault, of theft, of things that make me think that when I look at some of the charges against some of these people or some of the convictions that some of these people have had, it makes me think that there's something about what it is that we do that draws that kind of person into wanting to be part of this. Are we giving a thief easy access into somebody's house in the dark? Are we giving a pedophile easy access into a home where there may be children? So it's very concerning that people that have a criminal past are gravitating toward this hobby.
Yeah, and I actually had a situation where my personal safety got threatened from a candidate. And several years have passed since it happened, but this was one of the things that really made me tighten up our screening process, because at the end of the day, I shouldn't have even interviewed this individual. He ended up being somebody that after his application looked great, but he never put in a street address, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a little funky, but some people don't want their address out there.
Sure.
I get it. And so I interviewed him, and I realized, I don't think this is somebody I really want on the team. He ended up talking smack about a group that I really respected, and that's a red flag for me. It's okay to disagree, but when you're going on a 20-minute rant about how they're not credible, and, it's a little different from my personal experience, but just talking smack, or as I say, talking mess. And then, making some claims, extraordinary paranormal claims that when I asked them, like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? They couldn't give me an answer, and I just didn't think it was going to work. And the person barely gave me 2 days to respond, because I told him, I said, you're going to need to give me about a week or two, because I have to, need to think about it. I need to talk to my team members and X, Y, and Z. This person didn't even give me 2 days, and they totally went crazy on me, sending me threatening text messages, texting me my address, and saying they were going to come for me at my door, and making some really disturbing threats. And I ended up having to get a restraining order against them. And that was a pretty terrifying time in my life, especially when you start texting me my address and making really disturbing threats, against my safety. And then I found out he got on a team. He got on a local team a few months later, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did he get that far? And I ended up emailing the director of that team with the text messages and the restraining order, and all that stuff. And then this person the person that was making threats against me ended up getting arrested a few months later for trying to steal stuff at Walmart. So,
Wow.
Listen to your gut. Your gut's a good indicator, too, because I got the creepy vibe from the person. And, so it wasn't fun.
And here's what's funny about this that I don't think people understand. You don't have to be an equal opportunity employer. You don't have to give somebody a spot on your team if you don't feel that it's right. It's not like it's applying for a job. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying discriminate against people, but there's no reason why you should have to. It's not a job where you have to work with people sometimes that you don't get along with. You control the situation, and if somebody doesn't strike you as being a right fit, or if maybe somebody in your group isn't comfortable with somebody, there's no harm in saying, sorry, I don't think this is going to work out.
Yep.
I was going to say, I look at it this way. It's like forming a band. You have to make sure that you all gel together and can perform, to produce music. There's no guarantee that you have the spot as the drummer or what have you. Yeah.
So with that in mind, with those kind of circumstances out there, and we've heard other stories like that, unfortunately, it's almost like it's come up again and again and again, where there have been organizations that have been formed or groups that have tried to put together this idea of having national paranormal databases where people can share information about hauntings. There's been people who have pitched trying to put together some sort of licensing to be able to investigate the paranormal. I think in general, what would be the most helpful is if there's just a website of red flag people that are involved in the field with evidence, where we can say like, hey, we're not saying that this person is a bad person. We're just saying that this is what we have found. And so it's not a slanderous thing, or actually libelous if it's a website, but it's not libelous. We're just putting this out there for people that might not know this information otherwise.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Because, I mean, for example, with the situation with the person that I had to get the restraining order against, it wasn't very long until they were doing the same thing to that team after he got out of jail. I find that the patterns are very similar, but even for somebody not possessing a criminal record or being mentally unstable, I've had encounters with people where, you don't want to talk smack about somebody, but then, they do, and then somebody does something to me and I talk to a colleague about it and they're like, oh yeah, I knew that about them. And I'm sitting here like, well, why didn't you warn me?
Right. Yeah.
Why don't you just give me a heads up? I mean, just say, hey, heads up, this person did X, Y, and Z to me, just so you know.
Because it's one thing. Listen, it's one thing if somebody does something to you or somebody on your team. I mean, in a way, you can almost say to yourselves, all right, lesson learned, or, maybe you even can say to yourself, we need to protect ourselves better. We left ourselves open for that. But it's a completely different story when you're bringing that person into somebody else's home, when they're trusting you to come in, and even if it's something as stupid as someone had loose change on their dresser and you investigated, and when your team left, that change was gone, that somebody demeaned your team and devalued your team so much that they would be willing to take change off of somebody's dresser. I've heard everything from that to people outright stealing very expensive items out of homes while they're in there doing private investigations. And I don't know how that happens, because why would you do something like that? That's just so stupid. But second of all,
especially if there's cameras. Usually there should be cameras.
You would hope so, yeah.
From your phone group.
But you would think your own teammates would be like, okay, how'd that TV end up into our van? What's going on here?
That isn't one of our monitors.
Right, but it happens. It happens where people have been, stealing. And listen, it's never I shouldn't say never, because we've heard of other stories, but more often than not, it's stuff that's downright creepy. So that homeowner has to make the awkward phone call of saying, after you guys came here, my teenage daughter said she was missing underwear from her drawer. It's always something weird like that. It's never, hey, what happened to that Fabergé egg we had on the... I went back to risky business for that. Yeah. But, it's not something like that, but it's like, it's always something weird and creepy that has to make it an extra level of uncomfortable for you to address with your team.
Yep. We kind of have paperwork already for the clients set up in terms of expectations to help avoid that. I do ask the client if they want to remove all the valuables from their home. And this isn't a commentary on my trust in my team, but I'm also looking to protect us. Because on the opposite end of that, I have heard of teams in legal trouble because the client tries to stage something like, oh, you stole my TV or you stole my, $2,000 wedding ring, and then they try to file it, for insurance purposes.
I never even thought of that.
Insurance fraud.
Oh, yeah. Works both ways.
So I actually have paperwork that says I'm going to remove the valuables from my home, and we created. I actually did have a client do this. We created an itemized list of their valuables, and it took a little time. It took an extra couple weeks because I don't want to get in trouble. The client also has the choice to check off, I am not going to remove the valuables from my home, and I will not hold APS accountable if anything is missing. Granted, no, I'm pretty confident that no one on my team is going to steal anything, but this does protect us.
Right.
If something does go missing or if something is broken, it's very similar to what movers will have, when they're, moving items in your home, because of damage and whatnot. So, yeah. So we do that for our protection right there. But trust me, if I ever found out one of my team members was stealing stuff, they'd be gone and they'd be paying out of pocket for their own stuff. But for our paperwork, we do have a notary sign. So this is like really official.
Well, there's been a case that I heard of a group, and this was the entire group. This wasn't one person that was behind this. This was the entire group that was in on this. Mm-hmm. Where those Hummel figures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of those can get worth a lot of money.
Big bucks.
The individual Hummels. And there was a case that I'd heard about. I don't know for sure. This is just a story that I've heard third hand. But that a group went into somebody's home and saw that this person had a collection of these Hummels. And one of the Hummels was one of those very, very valuable ones. And somebody on the team happened to know that. So this person was convinced that there was some sort of activity happening in their house. And the group convinced the homeowner that it was the very expensive Hummel that was the source of the haunting, that something had attached itself to that Hummel and said, we can take this from you and take it out of your home and put it in our quote unquote collection, our museum, and then went and sold it.
Oh, wow. That's sneaky.
So I just want to say that to anybody out there that is, looking for a paranormal investigation or has somebody come in and thinks that they have a haunted object or a haunted item, there's a few reputable people that I would give it to if you want to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And people that will, outright let you know exactly what they're doing with it. And really, the only people that I would ever give anything to are John Zaffis and Greg and Dana Newkirk, because they will be fully transparent with where those items are going. I know some other people that have some collections that I would trust, but I don't know that they take things from other people, so I don't want to put their names out there. Right. But generally, like, if somebody tells you that they need to take an item from your house, you should really be very weary about somebody saying that, because chances are it's not going to be put on display in a haunted museum somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's and somewhere somebody's like, damn, that was my Hummel. Somebody's listening to the show and being like, I was the idiot that gave them that Hummel. But yeah. So
that's terrible.
But it happened. I mean, that's the thing, is like, you have to be in a very trusting place as a homeowner to let a paranormal group come into your home. You have
Oh
to.
my gosh, yeah.
You're the one that, I mean, I know that it's dangerous for a group to go in there because you never know really what you're getting into with the people that invite you into their homes. But really, the biggest risk is on the homeowner.
Oh yeah, that's. I've always said that people who need ghost hunters are not in their right mindset, and I mean that as a joke, truly. But you're asking some strangers to come into your home, and you're telling them your life story. Pretty much, you're telling that team some really personal things about your life, which you should be doing because we're kind of like detectives here. We're trying to figure out what's going on here and why it's happening. But we get to know these people sometimes on an intimate level. Like we learn about any abuse or trauma they encountered in their past or recently. We see their emotions. They become completely vulnerable before us many times. And I hope, because I have a really great case manager, she's actually a social worker, so she builds a lot of rapport with the client ahead of time. And I think she does a really good job of that because every client that has met her in person has always been very like, oh, I'm so happy to see, they hug her. So I know, and that's why she's my case manager, because I know the clients are in very good hands when I hand off the case submission to them. So it's definitely one of those situations where I have my social worker who's my case manager. She helps build the rapport and helps, build up our reputation a bit. And then that's followed through with the actual investigation where I step in more of an active role in this. But I think that really helped in getting us to connect to the client more because they are trusting us with some really personal information, and you want them to feel safe and comfortable sharing that stuff. But at the same time, you are asking 5 or 6 strangers to come into your home. So I think the more you can build that rapport and build that relationship ahead of time, it helps because you'll know if you're talking to a team about coming in. I mean, you'll know if you connect with them or not. So
well, and you had mentioned asking the homeowner about their religious background and religious beliefs. What happens if the way that you investigate conflicts with their own personal beliefs? So maybe, and I'm just using this as an example, I'm not saying a group does this, but maybe you use Ouija boards in your investigation and the homeowner isn't comfortable with that. Or maybe you use provocation and the homeowner isn't comfortable with that. Should it be a matter of the group saying, like, listen, we have to do what we do the way that we do it? Or should you just completely cater to what the homeowner is asking you to do and be willing to have to adapt your investigative style based on that?
I look at it this way. After the investigation's over, we're the ones that go home. The clients are the ones that stay. So we try to, as best as we can, we stay within the client's comfort level. We absolutely do not use anything or do anything that is outside the client's comfort zone. I am not a provoker. I don't use provocation. I would say 99% of the time I don't use provocation. There's sometimes that 1% that comes in that maybe I will, but I'll talk to the client first and get their opinion beforehand. But we typically don't investigate with Ouija boards, but we do investigate sometimes with other divination methods. So it could be dowsing rods, it could be a pendulum. We actually had a client that wasn't comfortable having one of my team members even in their home because she's pagan. She wanted a strictly Christian investigation, and I have a couple mediums on my team, and I do have a Christian medium, so she ended up going on the case. So I feel like, we want the clients to trust us too. So if we're doing things that are outside of their comfort zone, I think that does damage the trust a little bit. And like I said, the client is the one that has to stay with the house after we're done. So we try to do things in accordance to their comfort zone as best we can.
So I've been doing this show, Spooky South Coast. We've been on the air now
13 years.
Almost 14.
Yeah.
Be 14 in January. So, and I've probably been investigating. It was, the summer of that first year that Moni's first dragged us out into the field and said, "You're not just going to talk about it; you're going to do it too."
Yep.
So, in 13 years now of investigating, I only recently just did my first residential case where I actually went into somebody's home, because it's not me. It's not who I am. It's not what I'm about, and I can freely admit that. I have a hard time being there for people.
They're not easy, are they?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm the kind of person where if somebody cries, I'm like, I'm going to go over here now. I just can't be a good emotional support system for someone. And so for me, that was always kind of my biggest fear, was that I wouldn't be available to people. I mean, and also I have a ridiculous schedule, so I couldn't be answering the phone every time somebody called because they thought something was concerning. I couldn't be that comforting factor for someone. But I will say that when I was there and I was doing it, there's a sense of, there's a rewarding sense at the end of it of saying, like, you just helped this person feel a little bit better about what was going on. It just so happened that in this particular case, we were able to, without really even having to investigate, and just talking through with the family, we helped them realize that part of what was going on was a loved one who had passed away, very, very untimely, and that was probably what they were dealing with, if they were dealing with anything at all. And that was almost enough for them to say, well, we don't even really need the investigation anymore, but you might as well go through with it since you're here. But to see the look of relief on their face, and to see the feeling of still being able to connect with this young man who had died so tragically, there is a lot of reward in doing that. And I can understand why people like to take on these cases, because if you are going to do this as a hobby where nobody's really making any money off of it, that's what you get back out of what you put into it, is being able to walk away feeling like you made a difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think we recently had a case where the client had a dog, and while this activity was going on, the dog would never sleep in the bedroom with her. And she's a young woman in college. The dog was kind of the puppy age. Poor thing was always responding to the activity that was happening in the home. So that was a big motivator of, hey, we need. It wasn't just the client, but we were like, we got to do it for the dog, guys.
Right.
And so, I mean, we visited, I think, 2 or 3 times to this home, because it was one of our more intense cases. And one of the greatest moments probably in my paranormal career, I guess we can call it, is she had texted a picture of the dog sleeping in the bed with her, and she had texted the photo to my case manager, and my case manager sent it to me and was like, hey, look at this. And this client, we keep in touch with our clients after we're done, and she keeps texting us photos of her dog sleeping with her in bed, just to let us know, hey, everything's still okay. So we did it for the dog.
Well, that's doubly rewarding, when it's good for the people and for the pets. But one of the things that I had talked about before the end of the last hour.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
How do you feel about having animals on an investigation?
I haven't formally used a pet on investigation. Any animals that have been present has just been by chance because the client has them. I tend to take a lot of cues from the animals, because if there is something going on, to me, the animals are going to be responding to it. Whether it's a bug on the wall or a demon in the hallway, they're going to respond to it. So, I think they could be really interesting tools for an investigation. I try not to if they're not my animals. My cats are not interested in it. Although they will react to anything weird happening in my apartment, which sometimes happens. And, I think if you have trust with the owner, or it's your own animal, and I guess it just depends on what you want to put them through. I wouldn't be taking them to a place with a negative haunting. I would be definitely taking them to some place that's a little more benevolent, because, I care about the welfare of my animals. I don't want to stress them out unnecessarily, but I think animals can see things that we can't, and I think they do have that extra sense that, that we don't have.
I don't bring a lot of pets on investigations, but I sure do find a lot of guinea pigs. That's for sure.
That's random.
Well, we are all canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah, I turn everybody else into my guinea pigs for things that I come up with. But
okay, got it.
it was just a bad joke. It's been a while since you've been on Spooky South Coast, Alex. I got to remind you, I'm the king of terrible, terrible jokes. So beforehand, I was mentioning the fact that so many people are seeing themselves as stars in the paranormal world now, that they're because it's so easy to create this media on your own, that people are kind of buying into that themselves. And so one of the things that we've seen a huge influx of in recent years, it started with YouTube, where it was, people creating their own paranormal television series on YouTube. And then it's gone to other platforms that are developed over time. We've got Twitch now, or is that right? Twitch, is that all these different ones that are out there now, where people are putting their own programming out. And there's a lot of great people that are using that format to do great work, but it's also opened up the doors for a lot of people that are just into this just to try to be famous, and they're using residential cases as part of that. And I think that that's something that goes both ways, because not only do you have to be concerned about the people that want to come in with a camera crew in order to investigate your home because they're going to make a video to put out online or whatever, but you also have to be worried about the people that want you to come in and investigate their homes just because they think it's going to get them on television.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I had my own little stint on TV last year. I was on an episode of Most Terrifying Places in America, and when I was screening, when I'm screening clients, I'm actually the first one that sees the case submission. If I think it's promising, that I send it to my case manager. After that episode aired, I actually got a few case submissions that had mentioned the TV show, and they had specifically noted that they'd be okay with a camera crew coming in. Ooh. And I was like, oh no. So, which that's not how it works, but I find that with any case submission that we do with a client, if they mention TV shows, that's a red flag. I've had clients say to me or ask me where are the cameras, and I say, oh, it's my little camera right here that or our surveillance equipment we're going to be using, and they're like, oh no, we thought there was going to be a TV set. It's like,
it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, so I mean, if people are trying to get on TV, it's kind of like, well, I mean, everyone gets the emails from the TV producers asking for clients, for residential cases. If I have a client that has asked about it in the past, sometimes I'll forward it on to them just as hey, I knew you were wanting this for your own craziness happening in your home. Have fun. Good luck. If I know that's something that they're wanting. But most of the clients we take, they don't want to be on TV. They don't want this online at all, which we don't post anything of. We don't post any investigations online, residential wise or business wise. And I find the ones who don't want it to be out there in the public are the most genuine.
Right.
So,
well, and part of the problem though too is that these TV shows that are out there, like Most Terrifying Places in America or A Haunting or some of these other shows that depend on recreation of people's stories. Mm-hmm. The problem is they reach out to paranormal investigators and say, hey, what are some of your best cases? And so now these people are saying, well, I've got this case that was great, and this case had a lot of activity. And so then it becomes this thing where now you're reaching out to people and saying, well, we never originally meant to put you on television, but now we have television asking. And so, are you willing to go down that route if that's what they want to do? And I feel like there's enough stuff going on out there that the residential cases should be few and far between for what we're featuring on television. Ghost Hunters used to do every episode. They would have, they used to do the split cases where they would have a public place and they would have a residential place. And sometimes there would even be two residential places, but they got away from doing it because of all the things that would happen as a result of first of all, putting people on TV is not an easy thing to do, especially if it's run-of-the-mill, regular everyday people. And second of all, it's a much harder situation to control because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you can put somebody's house on TV because they're having a problem, and the next thing you know, it turns into the Conjuring house, where there's people standing out on the lawn at all hours of the night trying to get in.
Yep, exactly. And you also, depending on the situation, you could damage the trust you had with your client if you reach out to them, and that's why I have to be very choosy if I do decide to reach out to a client. But the client could be like, wait, you're telling TV producers about my situation? What's going on here?
Right.
Unless the client has ever said to me, oh, it'd be cool to be on TV about this, like literally they have to say it in that way, then I'll forward them the producer's email and just say, just thought I'd pass this on to you since I knew you were interested. Have fun.
That's something that happens, though. That's something where they will it's almost like TV producers know that investigators want to be on television. So they take advantage of that and basically utilize them to open up their casework. Instead of saying, let's put it out there to people, do you think you have a haunted house? Contact us. Instead, they're doing it this way, which I think is, it's a little bit shady. And I think
so, too.
And I like your approach where it's like you will only contact people that have told you that they wouldn't mind in the future. But I think that it's tough to call, because if you're calling a client and you're saying, hey, I think I got contacted by, a haunting, and I think your story would be perfect for that show. And the person says, well, I'm not really comfortable with that, so I'm going to have to say no. That client has got to be thinking to themselves, like, am I ruining this person's chance of possibly getting on TV? Mm-hmm. And am I hurting them because I'm being reluctant to do this? And then you get into the point, sometimes you get the investigator trying to talk the person into it and being real pushy about it. And it just sets up a bad situation that could just be easily, you can't tell me that if you just put out there that you were looking for haunted houses, you wouldn't get enough cases to feature in episodes. But instead you're doing it this way. And it strikes me as a way to kind of, you're setting up a lot of unnecessary problems for people on both sides.
Well, and also you're getting, I can see why a lot of these producers do it. You're getting free work out of it because that investigator will pull, if they want that opportunity, they will put in the legwork to research and find that client for the producer. So
yeah,
instead of having someone, you have to pay, instead of paying someone to go through those applications, you have somebody doing it for you for free.
Right. And that's what people don't realize is you're basically just handing them over the entire story and making their job easy and getting nothing for it in return. Except I see it all the time now. I see people that are like on one of these shows for 5 minutes, and the next thing you know, they're at a convention with a big poster, as seen on. It's like,
seen on Travel Channel.
But if I don't remember you, then does it really matter that you were seen on that?
Right.
That's kind of the way that I look at it. And I especially, I get aggravated by that when it's as seen on because it was about somebody else's story, that you were just part of it. Right. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, I don't really like having a banner at a convention myself anyway. And I tend to, quote unquote, forget it in the car a lot. Just because, most times I show up and I'm not in the mood to look at my face on a wall behind me all day. But hey, everybody's in it for different reasons.
Yeah, I do more of the geeky cons. So we're talking like sci-fi, anime, and I tend to do more of those cons because there's not a lot of paranormal. There's not a big paranormal presence there. Literally, the paranormal track is usually me and 2 other people, and that actually gives me a really great opportunity to talk to a lot of different people about what I do. Outside of going to a Paracon and everyone already knows everybody, and
right,
it tends to be it's a different ball game. I tend to really enjoy those cons.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love going and talking to all the people. I love being part of these things and interacting with everybody. I just don't like pushing myself. I don't want, people will come up to me like, oh, what are you selling? Because I don't have anything on my table. I'm like, I'm not selling anything. I'm here to talk to you. I'm here to be me. That's what I'm here for. And that's what I love. I love just networking with people. And I think that, I'm glad that we could talk about this topic tonight because it's an issue. It's something that I think is taken for granted in the paranormal world. That, you know, residential cases are just something that we do, and then it's it's kind of the cornerstone for a lot of these paranormal teams, but they don't really always give it a lot of thought. It's just something that they want to put on their resume, as something that they do, or something they can put on their website to try and draw attention for, potential TV producers. Mm-hmm. So thank you again, Alex, for joining us. Why don't you give everybody your website and information again one more time?
Yeah, my website is alexmatsuo.com. You can also find me on Facebook, and you can find my books on Amazon. Just type in my name, Alex Matsuo, and my books will pop up. And feel free to shoot me a Facebook message, send me an email, just say, hey, heard you on the show, just want to say hi. I accept most friend requests, so unless you're creeping on me, then I probably won't accept or answer your message. But yeah, I mean, I love meeting people. I love hearing people's experiences and ghost stories and opinions. And you can kind of find me anywhere.
Right. And anybody that heard the show earlier, that, Alex is not the one to creep on, because she will get down to business and.
Yeah.
All right.
I've had some interesting things in my inbox lately.
Well, wait till this show gets out there more. No, our audience is great. You don't have to worry about our audience. Well,
awesome.
Thank you again for joining us, and keep us up to date with everything that you're doing, especially if you come out with the companion book. We can have you come back on and talk about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to. All
right. Have a great night.
You too.
That is Alex Matsuo. Again, if you want to check out our website, alexmatsuo.com, that's Matsuo is the way to spell it, if you want to check out her site. And, of course, this is something that will be ongoing. This is something that will forever be part, I think, of the paranormal world, is doing these residential cases. Yeah. Just be hyper vigilant about who you're bringing onto your team, or if you're somebody that's looking for a team, be hyper vigilant about who you're letting come into your home. And don't be afraid to, say no. Don't be afraid to say no to somebody that wants to join your team. Don't be afraid to say no to somebody that wants to come in your house. If it doesn't feel right, chances are it's because it probably isn't right. So as Alex said, go with your gut. Yeah. And I don't know why that's such a bad thing, where we have to feel like the paranormal world feels like the regular world owes us something. And the regular world feels like the paranormal world owes them something if they're going to let them come in. Listen, if it's not right, it's not right. And it's hard enough to do these things that we do, and it's hard enough to get respect for what it is that we do. So let's try and do it as respectably as we can. And that's all I have to say about that on my soapbox tonight. If you would like to get in touch with us, Spooky Crew at SpookySouthCoast.com. We'll be back next Saturday night with another program. Until then, for Matt, for Stephanie, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.